Benchmark, the voice of business. Presented by LMD.
On this edition of Benchmark, Professor Lalith Gamage, the President and CEO of the Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology, joins us in the studio today as we continue to focus on digitisation and education. The LMD Nielsen Business Confidence Index dropped by 4 points to 115. Nielsen's Managing Director Sharang Pant sheds more light on this. And in our final segment, we discuss Sri Lanka's macro outlook with LMD columnist Shiran Fernando. That's the lineup for Benchmark.
Hello and welcome to Benchmark, the Big Picture Business Program. I'm Savitri Rodrigo. This week we are continuing our discussion on digitisation and education, and offering his perspectives is Professor Lalith Gamage, the Vice Chancellor and CEO of the Sri Lanka Institute of Information Technology. Lalith, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
How would you describe the current state of education when you look at it holistically in the country?
As you probably know, my expertise is in higher education, but let me also make some remarks on the education system. As you probably know, the education system in Sri Lanka is heavily focused on university education. When a student enters the kindergarten, everyone's intention is to somehow send that child to a university, and therefore we try to teach lot of content. If you look at primary education, lot of content, and then when it comes to secondary education, we have very specialized streams like physical science stream, biology stream and so on, and these streams are also targeting university placements, right. So, what happens is, as you probably know, we have very limited number of university placements in this country, and when they are not able to find a placement, they have very little skills to find gainful employment. So, there is a problem, and to talk about university placements, we have over 150,000 students qualifying to enter a university. However, we have only about 25,000 places available. So, this is actually a problem. And I can tell you a little bit about my experience when I was spending my sabbatical in Canada. I observed the education system in Canada. There, during the formative years of the students, children, they are trying to teach life skills, right. One thing that I have seen is they heavily focus on developing language skills, right. So, I was it's amazing actually, because when you develop language skills, their ability to absorb information, their ability to analyze information, and their ability to present information, right, is developed so that they can grasp things very fast later on, right. So, with those language skills, they also develop other skills. Other skills are like ability to think, ability to apply what is learned to solve problems, basically encouraging students to solve problems. Then also ability to integrate. This is also very important. Ability to integrate socially is absolutely essential. This goes back to, if you really look at developing discipline, developing a disciplined society, right. So, these things are very important, and if you look at I can also take an analogy, that is, if you learn a sport early on in your life, right, even if you don't play that sport for years, you start doing it, everything will come back to you. Whereas if you learn something later on in your life, let's say a sport, right, you go away for 2 months, you need 2 months again to come back to the same level. So similarly, if you learn these life skills early on in your life, those things will be embedded in your system, right. So that will always be there. So that is why education is very important, and we really need to look at how to structure our primary and secondary education.
So do you feel there's enough focus in actually doing the recommendations that you mentioned just now?
So right now, because of this heavily competitive environment, I don't think anyone is planning to make these changes, because as I said, everything is focused on university education.
25,000 placements a year, that's
25,000 placements a year. So coming back to, so that is the limitation that we have. So, but there are other opportunities in the non-state sector, but that if you take that 25,000, that amounts to about 17%. But if you look at a country like, we are a middle income country, right, the average for a middle income country, right, is about 40%, and we are even lower than, this percentage is even lower than that of a low income country. So seriously, we have to do something about higher education opportunities for our students.
Which countries do you think we can learn from in terms of actually refining the education system to what the future needs are?
So we can learn from many countries. I mean, you have developed countries, then you have newly developed countries, right? So the example that I took is Canada, right? Again, if you look at higher education system, I just would like to mention, how higher education is contributing directly and indirectly, right? If you look at UK universities, right? UK universities admit so many foreign students, and the income from these foreign students is about $33 billion, right? And if you look at Australia, the income from foreign students is $20 billion, right? And look at a newly developed country like Malaysia. Malaysia earns from foreign students more than $1 billion. So there is, so we can learn from how to structure our education system, how to develop, education as a destination for foreign students. So there are many things to learn, but I think we are doing certain things in terms of, I think government is also quite keen on getting non-state sector involved in providing more opportunities, more higher education opportunities for students.
If we look at the focus on digitization, how can we take the human capital and make it work for the economy and for the betterment of the country as a whole?
See, I will also address that. I think if you really look at one of the problems that we need to address today is to increase the diversity of our products and services that are exported, right? We have very limited products, or products are getting outdated. So they lose their competitiveness in the international market, right? I think from what we have to develop new products and services, there are a lot of things that we need to do. We need to have proper research and development programs, right? And also we need to have, a workforce that is changing with the, the requirements. So in order to do that, this, as I said, use of digital methods can certainly be used.
Okay, let's continue this discussion after a break.
Yeah.
Coming up after the break, Professor Lalith Gamage talks about the level of talent in Sri Lanka's ICT sector and also offers his views on how the country should leverage its intellectual capital for the betterment of the nation. So stay with us, we'll be back after these brief messages.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal. LMD podcast now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
We understand that savings provide for life's special moments. That's why we were the first bank to introduce an incentivized savings scheme, Pathum Vimana. We changed how a nation felt about savings because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Thank you for staying with Benchmark. We continue our discussion on education and digitization with Professor Lalith Gamage, the Vice Chancellor and CEO of SLIIT. Lalith, do you think, you mentioned about the government not being able to do the whole concept of education on its own. It would need, I would imagine this would be the ideal time for a PPP. Is there adequate partnership and collaboration between the government agencies and private partners to see that the goals eventually attain fruition?
So, I think if you really look at education, it has to be, universities can't work in isolation. There is a part that each stakeholder has to play. Universities must develop and deploy quality, relevant programs. Obviously, government has to facilitate that process by providing funds, by having the right regulatory quality control environment, and so on. I think private sector has a huge role to play. Private sector has to work with universities to tell them the type of graduates that they need.
Lalith, now at this point, this is not happening, am I right?
Well, it is happening to a certain extent. I can talk about, now for example, ICT industry is kind of a new mature industry. We can talk about it, it's happening with IT industry. But I think this needs to happen with other industries as well. So coming back to industry's role in this, getting involved in curriculum development, telling the universities the kind of graduates that they want, providing training opportunities, provide mentoring, obviously providing employment when they are graduated. But more than that, they also need to engage universities to develop research programs, right? Now, universities also to be internationally ranked, right? There are many things that they look at, ranking organizations. There are several ranking organizations like Times Higher Education ranking, QS ranking, and so on. If you look at many parameters that they look at, they are on research. Number of research papers that you publish, number of research graduates that you have produced, number of patents that you have obtained, how much of research funds have you obtained from industry and government, right? So these are the parameters if you really, to improve, if you want to improve your rankings. So to get research money, research projects, research has to be relevant as well. So the industry has to participate. If you look at other countries, industry is heavily involved in university research programs. They fund university endowment, research endowment chairs, right? So with research, you come up with innovation. You come up with startup companies. I can tell you one example. When we started SLIT at Merchant Tower, we also started a small incubator, right? And one guy, I am going to talk about one guy, he came straight after school and he asked me whether I could support him. I gave him space and provide mentoring, right? And he started a small company called Z Labs, right? And then he went on to develop, I know you know this, that anything.lk. And then he sold that and started PickMe. Today he's a very successful business person, young guy, right? And we provided that, he had that, innovation. Universities, as a university, we participated in that process. So there are thousands of these guys, right? And industry must support in terms of fund, in terms of developing that total startup culture. Right?
What is your take on the talent available in Sri Lanka in the ICT sector?
There is, of course, enough talent available, right? Only thing is we need to sharpen these talents, right? So to sharpen these talents, obviously you need a lot of things, including funds, right? But I must tell you, ICT industry is one industry that has constantly worked with the universities, right? They knew exactly the kind of professionals that they need. They knew the number of professionals that they need in their specializations, and they work with universities and institutions like ours. And therefore, we were able to produce the type of professionals that are needed by the industry. And therefore, if you look at ICT industry has developed for most part over the last 10 years, 25% year on year, and has become one of the very first 5 export earners for the country. So this is a remarkable achievement, and that is why other industries, I'm advocating, other industries like that have high potential, like tourism, they need to work with universities to get the type of professionals trained to support their industries.
So what needs to be done, Lalith, if we are to create that knowledge hub that we are so desperate to become?
So knowledge hub, I think we also need to kind of define what this knowledge hub is, right? It's like an ecosystem, right? And ecosystem, and also I can take the analogy of like a symphony orchestra, right? Everyone must play their part, otherwise it's going to be out of tune, right? So in that, the actors are the universities, the government, private sector, service providers. All these people must work together, right? So in order to develop a knowledge hub, you need to first develop talent, right? You have to have diversified programs to develop a diversified talent group, right? So that will create a talent which we will be able to market and attract investment, right? So then in that, so you have education programs, research programs, startup culture, you are having new companies developing, you have new products and services developing. So this whole thing working as an ecosystem to contribute to the economy.
What would be your vision for the education sector in Sri Lanka?
So my vision, I guess, rather than talking about a long-term vision within the next 5 to 10 years, I would like to see Sri Lanka as a education hub or destination for education. I can tell you, 15 years ago or maybe even 20 years ago, Malaysia was not an education destination, and they did not even have the talent that we have. We used to go and teach in Malaysian universities. They had to depend on external resources. But unlike those countries, we have a lot of people. If you go to any foreign university, right, you have Sri Lankan professors, you have Sri Lankan students, Sri Lankan PhD students. So there's a huge talent that is available. So what I would like to see is Sri Lanka as an education hub, having multiple universities, government sector, private sector, local universities, foreign universities, local students, foreign students, right? So that this is part of that ecosystem that I was talking about. Delivering good programs, high-ranking universities, right, and also developing new carrying out research, developing new products and services, which can contribute to our economy.
So, what do you think are the stumbling blocks in achieving that vision?
So, the stumbling blocks, I would say, obviously, we need. I think one of the main stumbling blocks that I can think of is, we have to first understand that education is necessary, right? The value of education, right? And then what education can contribute, not just produce graduates, but how those graduates and the research programs that I was talking about can contribute to the the economy. And also the procedures, some of the procedures that we have are not geared to to handle this kind of environment. So the procedures will have to be re-engineered, and also the people who are executing these procedures must also be educated and trained.
So those are thoughts to hold on to. Thank you very much, Lalith.
Okay, thank you very much.
So we've been talking to the Vice Chancellor and CEO of SLIIT, Professor Lalith Gamage, and he's been giving us some insights onto the values of education, what needs to be reformed, the stumbling blocks, and also the way forward. On the other side, we have Anushan Selvaraja.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
Nearly 60% of all businesses in our country are SMEs. Some of our most growth-oriented financial solutions have been customized to serve this sector. That's why we have invested over 500 billion rupees to support the backbone of our economy. Because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Anushan Selvaraja. Now for a closer look at the latest on the BCI. Joining me is the Managing Director of Nielsen, Sharang Pat. Welcome back to the show, Sharang. Now, since the beginning of this year, the BCI has fluctuated within a narrow band of 15 basis points. Now, what are the sensitivities behind this?
Yeah. So, from the beginning of the year, as you rightly said, the BCI has fluctuated in the range of 100 to 115. Now, what's happened in the last couple of months is the year-on-year inflation has been marginally coming down. At the same time, rupee was relatively stable. Plus, we also had the GSP Plus getting approved in the month of May. So, all this should ideally have helped the BCI move up. But unfortunately, towards end of May, we had the floods. And as a result, it impacted the consumption, it impacted the confidence index, and it came down to 115. So the macro concerns plus the impact of the flood is what is impacting the BCI right now.
So how do respondents view our business and economic prospects?
So talking about the economy, given that the macro concerns are still there and the flood is also impacting the confidence levels, about 40% of the business leaders say that the economy will more or less remain the same in the next 12 months. Now this number was about 36% last month, which means there's a slight decline in the sentiments on the prospects for the economy.
What about the investment climate, Sharang, and what do respondents envision in terms of investment in the workforce?
Yeah, so talking about investments, there are still concerns given that the interest rates are high. The rupee is still fluctuating or declining as such, so that's impacting cost of doing business. And as a result, the business leaders are still a bit wary about investing, but at the same time, they're not really talking about reducing the workforce. This could be in anticipation of work orders coming in the near future from GSP Plus or the other export markets, and certain investments coming into infrastructure with policy changes and all. So that in total, they are still maintaining their workforce, they're not reducing it, but at the same time not increasing it.
Thank you very much for joining us, Sharang.
Thanks, Anushan.
That was the Managing Director of Nielsen, Sharang Park. We'll be right back after a short commercial break. Stay tuned.
When we entered the industry in 1995, a new star was born as a fully owned subsidiary of People's Bank. For those seeking to grow their businesses, PLC provided the seed. We are not only Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company, but also the largest non-banking financial institution. Welcome to a new dawn for the nation. Introducing People's Leasing and Finance, PLC.
LMD is making waves, airwaves. The next big thing from Sri Lanka's pioneering business journal, LMD Podcast, now online. Listen to our articles on the go at www.lmd.lk. Select, play, listen. It's that simple.
Sri Lanka's #1 leasing company is now the nation's largest and highest rated finance company with 2 international ratings. Let us move the nation as one with People's Leasing and Finance PLC.
Gami Pubudua, our microfinance offering, makes it possible for the youth of this country who have a viable business plan but lack the funds to realize their dreams. We are committed to grassroots level entrepreneur development because we believe in banking beyond transactions. HNB, your partner in progress.
Welcome back to the show. I'm Anushan Selvaraj. Now for a closer look at the latest on the economy, joining me is economist and LMD columnist Shiran Fernando. Welcome back to the show, Shiran. Now in this month's issue of LMD, you point out some concerns with regard to credit growth. Now could you elaborate on this?
Pleasure to be back again. So in the article, what I was sort of honing on was the fact that it has been a while, it has been a long time where credit has gone above 15-20%. Central bank generally highlights 15% as the level that they want to see, but credit still hasn't come off. What's sort of worrying is that even though interest rates have gone up a lot, still it's taking a long time for it to sort of come off. So the concern is with growth sort of slowing down, GDP growth, consumption level sort of coming off as well. What is really exactly driving this? So and why is it taking so long to come down? So that's sort of the concern. I think what sort of will transpire is more policy decisions, and maybe it'll take more time for the lag impacts for it to have effect, for it to come down to maybe a sustainable level of maybe 15%. year on year.
The central bank also seems concerned, Shriran, that some policies that have been taken to cool down credit growth have not really worked. Now, what are the reasons behind this, and what steps do you think should be taken?
So they've sort of been on this tightening phase, which is basically raising up interest rates, and they've been doing that for the last year or so. So though they have been proactive on that end, and a lot of the statements have actually, compared to the past, they've said, we're trying to think forward, trying to preempt any issues or things like that. So central bank on their part has been more active on this. What they're not sort of seeing it is still the absolute number sort of coming off. So April, for example, absolute basis it came down, but that's because generally April is a low month historically, given the holiday period as well. Credit is generally low, and therefore the year on year also came down. So what will now be more interesting to see is how it will be in May and maybe the second half of the year, and if the central bank takes a view in the future monetary policy to think that rates, we need another tightening of rates. But having said that, I think what the central bank will also learn from the past is when they've raised rates too much, it has sort of slowed down the economy and growth as well. And right now we're sort of at mid 4-digit levels, and it's not too healthy. So central bank will be mindful of that as well, I think. So I'd expect them to maybe hold off on any more adjustments, maybe look at sectors.
Could you just tell us, in terms of credit growth, what are the key drivers?
So some of the key drivers have been, I think, construction related growth. So I think you've seen a real boom, not only I think in terms of real estate, apartments, land, but also other forms of construction, housing. So loans have picked up a lot. And what was earlier, say, about 14-15% of the total pie of private sector credit growth, ended last year around 19.2%. So it's slowly growing, and it's even becoming more than some of the other categories as a whole. So that's a bit of concern. But and then also I think you're sort of seeing it in terms of domestic trading. Some of the banking, financial services categories also sort of going up. But beyond that, I mean, agriculture, personal loans still are not growing too much to be sort of concerned. So maybe sort of the central bank has to look at these particular sectors and decide what they need to do with them without taking maybe holistic measures in terms of policy rates and affecting the economy as a whole. And maybe they could also take the view, 20-18% growth is fine as long as it continues and it doesn't cause an issue in terms of our balance of payments.
Thank you very much for joining us, Shriran.
Pleasure being here.
That was economist and LMD columnist Shriran Fernando. Thank you for watching Benchmark, and we hope to see you again next time.